Welcome to Arash's World, where you will hear prominent voices, psychoanalysts, psychologists, therapists, philosophers, and thought leaders talk about a variety of mental health concerns and problems, including how to deal with anxiety, depression, and chronic conditions, and how to become more resilient, find inner peace, be emotionally engaged in your personal and professional life, and just be your beautiful, authentic self. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Arash's World. We have a special guest today, DeNicholas. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
For sure. For sure. So the first question is tough, and then it gets easier as we go along. How would you briefly describe yourself to our audience? What would you say in any way you see fit?
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're right. That is the toughest one. Let's see. I used to be an electrical engineer designing integrated circuit chips, and then I got an MBA, went into management. Wasn't very happy doing any of that, and even though I had quite a bit of success doing it, and so in parallel, I've always been a very voracious reader. I read the whole encyclopedia when I was a little kid.
Nice.
Yeah. And mostly while sitting on the toilet, as my mother loves to point out to people. And so I started studying the problem of human happiness and suffering. And I learned a bunch of things there, did a bunch of therapy, and kind of figured some things out and realized that what I loved most about working in the corporate world was helping people and mentoring people. And so I decided to go into the mental health world in 2017 and became a therapist. And I'm a father, and I like to ride bikes and go camping, and living here in Colorado. So we have lots of good camping.
Nice.
And that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So your book is Seeking Sanity, How to Cultivate Peace, Happiness, and Well-Being in a World Gone Mad. And so the seeking sanity means like is something that we don't have, or it's the world that's crazy that is affecting our sanity. So why this title specifically?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Um, I would say we have sanity, but we don't know that we have it.
That's a good one. Yes, I agree.
And so that's what the book is really about, is um, helping people understand that there's some small things that they can do throughout the day
And the
to
world is
find
not
find that
helping
place.
us, right? The world is
Oh,
not
it's
helping us.
going the other direction, right?
Yeah.
I just saw a report. Our attention spans are down to 8 seconds, I think. It's some psychologists are calling that the quiet pandemic, and so you know, social media is driving kind of the worst parts of ourselves to interact with the worst parts of other selves and increase self-absorption, and we're ever more distracted. That's the biggest concern I have about those attention span numbers, right? We're just so distracted to the point where, I teach people to meditate, and a lot of people don't get 5 seconds of freedom before their mind starts torturing them again. And that's actually more common than not.
It is. It is very common. I want to look though specifically at your story, because you started as a tech engineer, and you
Mm-hmm.
talked about the corporate world as well, and a little bit of unhappiness there too, or maybe a lot. No, let's
Yeah.
dive into that.
Mm-hmm.
What's your trajectory like? Your journey?
Yeah, I was always pretty anxious. I always brought a little bit too much identity to school and work and achievement. Overachieving is a primary defense mechanism,
Mhm.
pretty common in America, at least, and in the West in general. Um, Very dependent on outcomes, which drove a lot of anxiety, wanting to control things too much. And so while I was good at it, I have a few patents, and I was making good money and was getting promoted and things like that. Um, but something just was never sitting right with me. And then I moved into management, and there were kind of increasing conflicts that would just kind of naturally occur. You know, I don't think it'll be a surprise to your listeners that a lot of upper managers are not the most honest when they get asked questions in communications meetings and whatnot. And they kind of give
That's
answers.
how they get promoted, right?
Right,
As well. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
There's some management theories out there that say, lean on people until they kind of squeal. Otherwise, you're not getting the most out of them. Um, I had uh, I saw people having panic attacks in the office. Um, and I'm not going to stress people out over money. I think that's insane. And people are dedicating the best part of their day to working at this company, and they deserve honesty, and they ask direct questions, and I think they deserve direct answers. And so there was a lot of conflict that was just kind of being generated. And I also don't really believe in laying people off at random. People need security, and that seems to be going by the wayside. And so I didn't fit there anymore. And once I realized kind of who I really am and what I'm really here on this planet to do, it became increasingly obvious that it was time to make a transition.
And there was a significant moment with microchip malfunction.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk
there's
about
several.
Oh,
Yeah,
several.
sure.
Okay.
So, yeah,
The main
several.
one, maybe.
Yeah, it was the one that started everything. That's why I put it in the book.
Right.
I had started at a new company and was given a cool project to work on. And I really put every single thing I had into it. And but nonetheless, it came back from the manufacturing facility with a bug. And so when I applied the primary test, it was meant to do a few things, but the primary thing it was meant to do was handle a very difficult event. When you plug something in and it sparks sometimes, that's a huge inrush of current. And it was meant to handle that and in various applications. And so for a couple of days, I tested the device and everything was looking great, exactly as I saw on the simulation. And then it came time. Okay, we're ready. It's time to take a baseball bat to it. And sparks came out, smoke and sparks.
Oh my
God.
Yeah.
And I actually had a panic attack in that moment. I lost touch with reality. It was very strange. Time got really weird, sweating. And I was like, okay, well, maybe my setup is a problem. And so I looked at everything and I was like, no, this setup seems okay. So I took the chip off, put a new one on, tried again, boom, same thing. And it was what's meaningful about it is that in that moment, I realized that my primary way of trying to be okay in the world, of being perfect enough and controlling, had failed me. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is going to affect my career. And then one of the most poignant moments, which I also talk about in the book, it took me 3 days to tell my boss. And he kind of leaned back in his chair and I said, yeah, it blows up. And he goes, yeah, it's power electronics. That stuff blows up all the time. You'll fix it. Don't worry about it. And then he went back to typing. Yeah. Like it was nothing. Yeah. And so this thing that I was having a panic attack, he had total confidence in me. And of course we did fix it. We found out exactly what was wrong and we fixed it on the next try and it worked great. And it was actually a really high performing chip. It was great. It was a great experience, but it really showed me, wow, not only my reaction in relationship to my work and myself, but how others are so different. Yeah, exactly. And it was like something's wrong. Something's not right. It's time to start figuring this out, Joe.
Yeah. And that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome because it seems like the end of the world, I would think at that moment. Right. For you. It's like, this is
unbelievable.
Like life does not continue.
Career is over.
Life is over. The existence is over. But that's the overreaction that we don't see because we're so trapped in it, in our views. And it's like, it's good that you had that sudden self-awareness. It's like, hey, wait a minute. Right. It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Things break. We fix them. We're engineers. This is what goes on. But then it became, what's going on with me? Why would I react like this so powerfully? And, it's, and that became a search. And it's like, why am I so anxious? My life is fine. I mean, that's really, the benefit is, on paper, everything looked just fine in life. And it was, but it wasn't okay for me. And it's like something's, I'm approaching this. There's some flaw in my approach here. And then once I started going down the rabbit hole and I started getting happier and happier and happier, then I was like, oh, I just kind of kept going with it. But it was a long process. There were a couple more incidents where I got sick and had to question what's going on there due to stress, very likely due to stress. My immune system wasn't functioning very well. So it was a 10-year process from that chip exploding. It was a 10-year process of me really figuring out and getting my mind under some semblance of control to get out of that highly anxious state. And I've kept going with it. What helped? Mm-hmm. Meditation.
Yeah.
And just the wisdom, I don't love the label. I am technically a Tibetan Buddhist. And I've studied Buddhist psychology quite extensively. I kind of consider it, and others, even, Sam Harris, who's an ardent atheist, says Buddhism is kind of the crown jewel on planet Earth in terms of understanding human suffering and its alleviation. And what I realized through those studies is that we're failing a test we've been given the answers to. And it's really fascinating because I read a lot of neuroscience papers these days and psychology papers. And still to this day, even just this week, I read papers that they say, this is a surprising finding. And it's like, yeah, we've actually known about that for 5,000 years. Yeah. The Hindus knew about that 5,000 years ago. And it's like, it's not new. It's new to us, but it's not new.
It's like the mind-body connection. It's like, and still some people are still doubting it, which I think, what planet are you from? Yeah.
Right. And there's so many words that we bring over, and we can't translate them because, in Sanskrit, there's, 20 words for mind and we have like 3, because our understanding, it just hasn't been that sophisticated for very long. But it's nice to see because neuroscience is coming along and understanding how the mind gets locked up in suffering and what it takes to release it from that. I'm very interested and excited about psychedelic therapies. They're showing a lot of promise, and we're increasing understanding the neuroscience behind why. And so it became a really passion project for me of being on the leading edge and understanding how does the mind free itself of suffering.
And what parts of Tibetan, I didn't know it was Tibetan Buddhism, but what parts of Tibetan Buddhism is like for you so important, like in terms also of the ideas of the mind and so on? And I had Bob Thurman on my podcast and was amazing. Yeah. And
are you fortunate?
And his book too, like he'd written about the Eightfold Path in his own way of applying it to today's world. So what was something that you would, that really fascinated you in Tibetan Buddhism specifically?
2 things, really. Just the fact that, it's kind of an engineering approach. Mm-hmm. There's a problem, it has a cause, and it has a solution. Yeah. Go, right? But what really has impressed me are the methods. Mm-hmm. They have methods that can free the mind in just like that. Right. And just immediately release the mind from anxiety and depression. And it's like, wow, how could this be on this planet and everyone doesn't know about it? And so when you get hooked up with the right teacher for your kind of mind and the right practice for your kind of mind, I try to tell my kids, like, you just don't know what you're missing. When the mind realizes that it's already happy and peaceful and stable and indomitable, it's not this scared little thing, and it learns to enjoy being in itself. There's no greater gift you can give the world, let alone yourself. But I think that's an issue, is that as I watch this come to the West, a lot of people are like, I'm going to meditate to feel good about myself. It's like,
yes, yeah.
You're already going the wrong direction.
I know someone who would meditate for 4 days and trying to do 5. It's like, increasing and just working really hard. Right. It's like that's not the point.
It's not it. Yeah. The harder you try, the further. It's like trying to fall asleep at 2 a.m., right? The harder you try.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the fundamental reason for that is because your mind is you already have what you're looking for. It's a matter of learning how to see it and stabilize your seeing of it and experience of it. Because it's like, I'm really trying hard to get the thing that I already have.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
how's that going to work? You know,
Yeah.
how do you get something you already have? Yeah. And the harder you try, the worse, the further you get from it.
And that's with perfection or even happiness, because we're seeking happiness, we're looking for perfection. But the mind, like the moment, is perfect on its own. Like it is perfect right now, and that's, I think, with meditation, when you take away all the doubts and the things that are like kind of pulling you down, it's like, wait a minute, this is a perfect moment in itself, right? Why would I look for anything else?
Right. But for my demand that it be different.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, and that's where you start to realize, like, I'm really doing this to myself. And that sounds like rough news, but it's actually great news because you can learn to stop.
Yeah, if you're the problem, you can fix the problem.
Right. If you're not, I tell people, in my therapy office here, like, people want to blame the world. And I'm like, you don't want the world to be the problem.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to do? You're going to move the world? And it's not that we don't try. I hear people get confused about Buddhist ideas and say, they want you to just accept everything. It's like, no, we don't say, no one's saying don't make an effort to try and improve politics and the circumstances of your life. And it's just, what do you do in the meantime? And you can be happy now. You can, even though things are very challenging and messy and chaotic. Find the place inside yourself that's not messy and chaotic, and see where that takes you.
Yes. But what about the idea, like starting with the premise that life is suffering? Because I can see the suffering, but life is so much more than suffering. And just like when you focus on that, that's I love Buddhism, but it's like that is sort of like kind of, I get a bad vibe.
Rubs you the wrong way.
It rubs me the wrong way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who am I to criticize it? But still, it does rub me the wrong way.
Yeah. I think that, and as I didn't write it's certainly not a Buddhist book. It's kind of Buddhist informed, and I don't present myself as a Buddhist teacher, and I don't want to do that here either. I'm primarily a therapist, and I've studied Buddhism a bit, extensively enough. But I think, when you say life is suffering, I think that's meant to be explored. And as I've explored that, you start to look at, like, look what pleasure kind of does to your mind. And see, is your mind ever really happy? I mean, isn't it a diabolical trick that, you have this song and people say, oh, this is the best song. Well, go listen to it 10,000 times in a row and see if you still like it, right? And it's like, okay, mind, I gave you exactly what you wanted and you're not happy with it. And so, but I think the key thing that I've learned is that life is suffering when it's approached in a certain way.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's not otherwise, right? And when it's approached from a very demanding, I want things my way, and I can only be happy when I get things my way, and I can only be peaceful when nothing's bothering me, that life is full of suffering, and everyone can come to see that. But life doesn't have to be full of suffering. That's the whole point, is that we can learn to shift out of that demanding, insatiable mindset and into a mindset that's completely at peace with life.
And sometimes it's just getting by or getting through the day, the week, the work, and so on. And I think that is a very negative way of seeing things, because it's not about getting through. It's really like living to the fullest, enjoying life, enjoying the moment, even if it's a boring moment, but still enjoying the boredom, being open to that.
Right. And by the way, there's a million colors, and neuroscience is telling us and showing us that this is all a giant hallucination. Like, what do you mean boring? I used to tell my kids, you don't get to be bored. Go look for mushrooms or something. Go learn something cool. Like there's an atomic bomb in the sky keeping us warm. And like what do you mean you're bored? Pay attention. Right. But I think that's the key, it's about learning how to be a human and live this life in a way that that you can start to see that the moment is perfect, even if it's not exactly what I want it to be. And relax into that. Just relax. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Yes, there's chaos and things need to be worked on. And yeah, we'll get to all that. But we're fine.
We're fine, exactly. And it's like getting to the root causes of what is really like causing this negative view or this like this
Mhm.
feeling that we have, like you did with your exploration. It's like, well, why am I feeling like this? And then
Right.
I think well, some people do, but a lot of people don't. And I think it's really
Mhm.
rewarding to find that, because that once you get to the root of the problem, you fix it, like you heal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing is, I think that's part of the challenge with coping. We
Hmm.
have all these, and that's why I wrote this book, because I saw in the self-help literature, which, there's obviously an awful lot of it now these days.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to just rewrite that stuff. Um, but it's not about coping. It's about realizing that, stability is possible. And if you're willing, and it doesn't take hours every day. Some people meditate for many hours a day, and that's great for them. But this idea of coping, one thing you learn when you go on retreat, I just got back from 6 weeks in Denmark,
Oh,
and
cool.
and when you take away everything that you use to cope, all your pleasure chasing and distraction, you realize just how dependent on those things you are. And
Mhm.
you realize that when your mind is, because you're in this beautiful setting, you're around beautiful people who are really kind and loving, and you're eating really good food, and your mind can become miserable. And
Mhm.
almost everyone has that experience. And it's like, how can I be miserable here? It's like, because all my toys have been taken away, the foods that I like, my bed, my wife, my entertainment options, my fun activities. And you start to see just how much you're relying on that. And that's a big issue I see in the therapy office, where people they come to me because they want to face themselves and they want to deal with it. But we sometimes need to say, like, maybe put some of those things down for a month or two
Mhm.
and let the pain arise. Because as long as it stays suppressed through coping, and so obviously coping is better than not coping. We don't
Yeah.
want people
Yeah.
to, you know, go to, and healthy coping is better than unhealthy coping.
And
But
so some mechanisms are better than others. They're healthier
of
than
course,
others, right? There's that
exactly.
too. Yeah.
Right. But coping can't be the end.
Yeah.
That's demeaning to humans. We are entitled to, as a human being, we are entitled to much more than that.
Thriving. We should be thriving.
Thriving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thriving. That's the word. We are entitled to thrive no matter what happens to us, no matter our circumstances. We are allowed to thrive emotionally and psychologically and relationally. And we can. We
Mhm.
can. It's a lot of people look at Buddhist theory and think it's very depressing and it's all of us suffering. It's like it's actually the most hopeful thing you'd ever. It's you're guaranteed, actually.
And you see the Dalai Lama who always laughs. I mean,
Right.
there has to be like something going on there.
There's
Like, why
something
is he
going
always
on.
happy? Yeah.
Right. Well, not only that, but we put monks and nuns in brain scanners, right? fMRI machines and EEGs, and we can see that their mind is much happier than ours, right? And they're not stuck in this self-ruminating
Yeah.
loops and anxiety. We can see it, and so the great book, My Altered Traits, and it talks a lot about the scientific evidence, and it doesn't take 70,000 hours of meditation. You can learn in a weekend how to get out of this default mode that we're in, of this self-ruminating thing that's just not pleasant. And so we know that these folks have figured some things out, and it's not just Buddhists. There's in many different traditions. There's contemplative traditions in Christianity and Judaism. I mean, all over the place. It's not tradition specific, and that's why I really don't like to focus too much on Buddhism. That's something that resonates with me, but everyone can find a contemplative tradition and learn how to be healthier in their mind.
And results and outcomes are important. So when they say we do this and you can actually see it has an effect and their life has gotten better, then you
Right.
trust them. Whereas like if they're miserable, then like it's not working. And I know actually quite a few yoga teachers who are quite anxious. And I'm wondering like,
Mm-hmm.
is this working for you? Because
Right.
I don't think that should be happening.
Right. Right. The proof is in the pudding, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But
exactly.
that's the thing. It's kind of funny because neuroscience is kind of settling on this Bayesian model of the mind where it's predicting And that's why we're anxious and traumatized, as the mind is predicting. And I read in an interesting paper the other day that says, how do we return cognitive flexibility to the mind? And then it said, an interesting candidate has emerged: flow states.
Mm-hmm.
Flow states allow more cognitive flexibility. And I'm like, surprising to who? Like, that's the whole point of meditation. Like, sit down and generate a flow state. You don't need to be in nature. You don't need to be engaged in an activity that's interesting to you and novel. Just sit down and learn how to flow state right now. Mm-hmm. And so it's just kind of funny to see how it's filtered into the West. And we act like it's new information when it's, like I said, 5,000 years old. Mm-hmm. Maybe 2,500 years old, but it could be up to 5,000.
And I want to look at the neuroscience too, but as you mentioned, like predicting, like the experience machine was a book that I found very interesting, because it's like,
Andy Clark.
we are creating this other world, and we're kind of trapped in that loop, because if I assume that I'm going to be shot down or my microchips are going to blow up, they will blow up.
Right. You're going to see it, right? That's what's amazing. It's not just at the level of story or meaning where this is happening. It's down at the level of perception.
And then you say, see, I was right. Yeah, it was like, well, yeah, but at what cost?
At what cost? And so we're really and that's where psychedelics are coming in, because they're releasing people from their priors. Yeah. And so I think that that's really going to blow the doors open on therapy. And, it's going to be a long process of learning how to properly use that instrument. But it's really nice to see that we are figuring it out. I would like to see us be a little wiser and consult with the people from the East who have been doing this and staring at their minds for thousands and thousands of hours for thousands of years, and say, like, how give us some advice on this, because there's a lot of wisdom, an awful lot of wisdom locked up in there that I think the West can learn from, in terms of, like, who is this good for? What's the right preparatory practices for someone to have a positive psychedelic experience? Can they rest their mind as awareness when everything else is warped and chaotic? Can they rest back in the base state of their mind? And so I think it's really exciting that we're having a lot of scientific verification and validation. And I wish we would consult with those folks a little bit more than we seem to.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot to learn.
What would the neuroscience show? I mean, obviously meditation is a method that, again, works, and that's been proven. What are some other things that we can find through these experiments that would be helpful for dealing with our stress, our pain, our anxiety? What would you recommend?
Neuroscience experiments or
neuroscience,
meditation experiments?
Actually both, because if, again, that comes to, you're melding the two, right? So of looking at both of them, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, the neuroscience is really, it's when it's looking into and psychology around a network, and what is, a lot of neuroscience going on. What is consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. And they're looking, and we're kind of stuck right now, and it's really fun to watch this debate between, like, does brain cause mind, or does mind, which is an undefinable thing, cause brain, right? And how we're going to approach well-being is going to be very different, which avenue we understand. And so it's really nice to see that, when neuroscience says priors, the Buddhists might say karma, right? Mm-hmm. And that there is no objective reality. And science has shown that. We've known that in the West for quite some time now. And so that really, and so I always come back to, because I'm an engineer, right? I'm an applied scientist or an applied mathematician. Well, I'm kind of an applied neuroscientist, or in a way, right? Where I always come to, like, what's the practical cash value? You are responsible for your reality. Mm-hmm. It's not happening to you. Mm-hmm. That's not what's happening. And once you understand that, you realize that internal cultivation of well-being is really very important. Yes, of course, work on your life, try to make more money, have better relationships, all the things, right? But that's where the neuroscience is really showing us we have internal issues. And that is where the solution is going to be found to peace and happiness. And that is now undeniable. There this fantasy of objective observation is based in the fact that it's impossible. There's an observer. Therefore, you're in subjectivity. Two people can look at the same thing and they have different priors and they literally see different things.
Yes.
And that's what we see with psychedelics. And then you say, okay, well, not everybody wants or can do psychedelics, and we don't know how to exactly do that perfectly safely yet. And so it's going to be time. Well, there's these flow states. So now you can start running some experiments. And, sometimes people will say to me, because I'll make a claim, and it seems in the West like it's an audacious claim, like the mind has a base state that is beautiful and loving and compassionate, and it's an awake, aware consciousness. And they say that sounds like a religious or spiritual statement. I say it's not. Go run the experiment. Find some teacher from whatever tradition and make sure the teacher, like, test them out a little bit first. Make sure they've got it going on, and then listen to their instructions. Apply them to the best of your ability for a few thousand hours. And people say, "Oh, that's crazy!" Like a half hour a day for a few years, and see if you can go find this thing. And you will validate that as you get to know yourself better, and as you peel off the layers of confusion and hurt and sadness and fear, you will see the light shining inside you, just as everyone that has run these experiments. And you can look at Saint Teresa d'Avila from the Christian tradition was writing about this in her book, The Mansions. It's like, we have known about this forever. And that is what we are. We are an awake, aware, loving consciousness. It needs to come out of religion. That is not a religious statement. It's not even a spiritual statement. It's just how our mind works. It's what we really are.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And we need to stop with all of this. It's religion. It's not. It's just how the mind works. And now we have the neuroscience backing up the religious tradition, saying, here's how, if you want to change how you see the world, you need flexibility. And it's openness and flexibility plus insight.
But the problem is our mind labels things. And so we need to label things. Oh, this is this. So we're kind of in a bind there where it's like, this is a natural tendency, but hey, relax, because you can't label something that's not unlabelable. I don't know if that word exists.
I get that. I would ask you, is it the label or the attachment to the label that causes the problem?
Well, it could be
right?
both.
when you label it and you say, this is that,
That's
and it's nothing but what I label, right?
Yeah.
And then you've closed your mind.
That's right.
And then I think that becomes that has the potential to become an issue for you then. So, that's what one of the points I make in the book 50 times is it's the thing is not the problem. Your relationship to the thing is the problem. Is where you'll find the issues.
I love the example of Buddhism when they take a bicycle and then they take parts, the bars. And so it's like, when does it stop being a bicycle? It's like, I don't know.
Right. And as those parts come back together, like at what point, I actually wanted to write a little web app because, I'm an engineer, so I think in these terms, that adds a pixel every second, right, to an image, and then have people come in and click when they know what the object is, right? And then you could plot that and see a wide distribution of how many pixels did people need before they realized. And I'm sure it would end up being a bell curve like most other things in nature, right? But it's like, at some point the mind went, bicycle.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's no bicycleness in the bicycle. That's just, that's an imputed idea, right? And once you start to see that, and that's kind of what this is a bunch of ideas. And that's one of the points I try to make it to people is you were given a script of what the world is and what you are and your place in it and how to relate to it. And that's one script amongst an infinite possible scripts. And that may not be the best script. In fact, I would say believing that you're a small, scared, hurt, lonely thing fragile, insecure thing that needs to shore itself up against the world, that's like almost the dumbest script we've got. It's really stupid. When you start to see what you really are and what's happening here, it's like, that's a really dumb way to organize this whole thing, this beautiful thing called reality.
Yeah, exactly. And what about the gut? I mean, here we talk about gut feelings. You feel something
Mhm.
in your bones, your heart as well. Like, is
Yeah.
neuroscience giving more, like looking more at those parts? Because I know there's the talk about like there's brain cells in your guts as well. So it's like
Yes.
when you get that feeling, it does mean something. It's not just your imagination.
It does mean something. And I talk about that a lot. I don't see a ton of, I don't, like I said, I spend most of my time in consciousness studies.
Mm.
Um, and there, that deals more with the unconscious mind. I mean, the conscious
Mhm.
mind is hard enough to study because it's subjective, right? We
Yeah.
can't measure what we're seeing. You can't measure outside here what I'm seeing, right? And so it's subjective already. And then you get into the unconscious mind. Michael Pollan just
Mhm.
talks
Yeah.
about that in his book, The World Appears, right?
Mhm.
And, and, uh, but I tell people, there's thought-based knowing and then there's felt-based knowing. Like when you, and everyone can remember, has an instance where like you left the house and you were forgetting your lunch and you just felt weird. You didn't know why. And then
Mhm.
3 hours later, you're like, forgot my lunch. Well, your gut knew that, but
Yes.
it doesn't have a language center. And so it can't tell you, hey, you're forgetting your lunch.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think, and other people have the experience of like, how do I know I love my wife? I could tell you a lot. I could say lots of words, but or my children, right? Like I know.
Mhm.
And that's where that felt based knowing comes in. And it's critical. And I tell people, watch out because the mind, the left brain, we know from split brain research, um, that it tells stories, and that's where the defense mechanisms primarily reside, right? And so, everybody knows when the thinking mind says this, but the felt says something else, you're in the danger zone. You better be real careful
Yeah.
because more often than not, this one's kind of full of it, and this one knows the truth. And so I really help my clients in therapy get in touch with felt based knowing, like what is your gut telling you, and learn to listen to it. But that requires some sensitivity because a lot of us are very closed off to our bodies.
Mhm.
And sometimes I ask people, what's going on inside your body? And they're like, nothing, but I can see from the outside, like, oh, there's a lot going on. You can't stop moving.
Mhm.
As soon as I asked my question, your whole body started to move, and yet you're telling me everything's just fine. And so it requires a little bit of sensitivity. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Wow, fascinating discussion. Thank you so much, Joe DeNicholas. You're a licensed therapist,
Mhm.
contemplative teacher, founder of Unbreakable. I want to mention that too,
Mhm.
actually. Unbreakable
Mhm.
Inc. What is that about?
Mhm. Unbreakable Link is kind of it started out as kind of the shell company for everything I'm doing. But, what I found when I started doing therapy is, therapy is often expensive and very time consuming.
Mhm.
And, it doesn't meet a lot of people's needs. And because there's a large group of people that either due to time constraints or they're just not very unwell. Like there's a large class of people that I kind of define as they're not yet clinically unwell,
Yeah.
but they're not happy and
And they're not
peaceful.
usually targeted because they go like, you're okay. You don't really need
Right.
it, but you would benefit from it. Kind
But
of
you would
that in
benefit,
between. Yes,
but insurance doesn't want to pay for that, right?
that
You
is
have to
right
prove
too. Yeah.
medical necessity, right?
Yes.
Because like if this isn't kind of messing your life up pretty good, yeah, like that's not really for insurance. You're not unwell or sick, and I don't really like those words. I don't use them,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's kind of the medical model.
Yeah.
And so I kind of saw a gap, and so I like to put on workshops where it's like a 6-part workshop where you can learn just some really cool techniques, learn how your mind works a little bit and what you can do, and just get the process started of learning, 10 to 15 minutes a day, plus a few check-ins throughout the day, how to reset your mind and find the place of stability within it. And so Unbreakable Inc. is now trying to really plug the gap there because there's a huge gap. And I know there's lots of people putting on workshops and stuff, and it's great because we're in a mental health crisis, and so it's all hands on deck. So the
The
more
more the
people
better.
the
Yeah.
more the merrier. Yeah, we
Yeah.
need everybody. We need everybody. The more helpers, the better. And so I'm just kind of putting my name in the mix and saying I'm also somebody who puts on workshops that are they're fun, they're online, and they're interactive, and experiential, right? And I'm an experiential therapist. Like, let's do it right now. We can't talk about all this theory and what you're going to do later. Like, let's do it right now. And that's what we focus on in the workshops.
Yeah. And then your book again, Seeking Sanity, How to Cultivate Peace, Happiness, and Wellbeing in a World Gone Mad. Thank you so much, Joe DeNicholas. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. Same to you. What a wonderful conversation.